Welcome to Sweet Blessings Farm. I'm Gina Phelps and I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner. I had the opportunity last weekend to demo cultured foods at the Homesteader of America Association in Warrenton, Virginia. We had so much fun all day getting to meet new people and talking about fermented foods. After my demonstration, a lot of people came up to me and asked where my recipes were and where they were, and I said I didn't have them written down. So they really encouraged me to write down. So instead of doing that, we're going to do a video. As I promised, we'll have two recipes for you. The first one today is going to be cultured tomatoes, little cherry grape tomatoes with basil and garlic, and they are unbelievable. Still haven't really thought of a name for them other than like Italian Bites or Italian Delights, or I'm not quite sure what the name's going to be, but once you try them yourself, I think you're going to find your own name and really enjoy that. So to get started, this is the easiest cultured food recipe ever. So let me go back a minute. Part of culturing or fermenting is the process of preserving. One of the things that I found with the tomatoes, they don't preserve a long time. They're not like sauerkraut or pickles that you can preserve for an entire year. The problem with them, and it's not really a problem, but they are so full of sugar that they ferment just like a fruit with. And if any of you have ever fermented with fruit, it ferments very quickly and turns to alcohol very quickly. Now, alcohol tomatoes are just not my thing, but my pig loves them. So we make them. If we don't eat them, the pig gets them. So yay for Remy. Anyway, very, very simple. We start with putting the tomatoes, and I had an opportunity. I had a neighbor who's got some really pretty tomatoes left at the end of the season. So it's a great thing to use for the end of the season. Tomatoes, fresh basil, I just picked about a half an hour ago out in the garden. And this was one that came up from last year, which is really cool. Fresh garlic from the garden this year. And peel it ahead of time, please. You don't want brown and nasty garlic. Put more tomatoes, layer them on here. It's so easy, you can tell already. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is so simple. More basil, and the more basil and the more garlic you use, obviously the more fermented and the flavor is going to be more enhanced. And what's going to happen is this flavor is going to go right into those tomatoes. Put that on there. Top it off with a few more tomatoes. You don't want to squish these down. Normally when you're doing a ferment, you're going to want to press it down and really get it down in there. But with this, obviously you don't want to mess up your tomatoes. Top it off with some garlic and more basil. So I don't know about you, but these are probably the three of my most favorite foods ever. And you can eat this raw after you're done, or one of the members at the Homesteaders meeting recommended blending it up and making a sauce and putting it over some nice spaghetti squash or fresh zucchini. It's really nice. Now, all filled up. Now the only thing left to do is I like to do a salt brine with it. Now, let's talk about salt brine for a minute. We're going to use gray sea salt. I found one of the best. It has a lot of minerals in it, so it's a really good salt for you. It also dissolves very nice, and it doesn't taste, I don't know how to say this, real salty. It just has a very, very nice flavor. I recommend when you're doing any kind of brine or even any kind of ferment that you start out with about a tablespoon per quart of product, veggies, liquid, whatever you're going to use. You can always add salt afterwards. There's so many people I talked to last weekend that said, oh my gosh, I spent all this money and I made this wonderful ferment and I couldn't eat it because it was awful. Unlike when you put too much salt in your veggies and you can add a potato in the water, you can't do this with a ferment. So start low. So I put it right on top there. Now, I'm going to fill this right up with water. This is fresh, pure water. I have a water filter. Whoops, and of course I made a mess everywhere. And fill it right up to the top. You're going to want to make sure that everything is under the water. So there's a couple ways of doing that. I found one of the best ways to do it is using a product called Pickle Pebbles. And the Pickle Pebble is just a clear glass wedge. Now you could use a rock. Go outside, get a nice rock that would fit in your wide mouth jar, put it down in there, And I'm going to pop that right on the top there. Now, as long as I didn't add too much water, I'm not going to make a total mess. I have a little bit too much. But what that does, if you can see it, there's no vegetable above the water. One of the reasons for keeping the vegetable under the water is it's an anaerobic activity with the salt and the ferment and the bacteria, and you don't want the vegetable to hit the outside air, so we're going to cover it. Now, the second thing that I love to use, and this is fairly new, they're called pickle pipes, and we're going to, they're a silicone pipe. They have a little tiny hole at the top. Place it right on top. Place your regular ball jar lid on it, and your ferment is finished. Now, I always put these on the counter because I think they look really pretty. This will be done in about 3 to 4 days if the temperature of your house is at about 65 to 70 degrees. If your house is warmer, it'll be done quicker. If it's colder, obviously, it'll be done much longer. What happens, you'll start seeing tonight, tomorrow probably, you're going to start seeing little bubbles that come up if you touch it. Little bubbles will come up to the top. Little bubbles start coming up to the top. And that's the process happening. Now, I did put salt in there. It was across the top, so I'm just going to shake it a little bit. I'm not going to smash it, shake it, and that's really all you need to do with it. You don't need to shake it during the week, but what you might want to do is just check and make sure everything's underneath it. The last thing is, the reason I love using these little silicone lids is as the pressure inside builds, this lid is going to start expanding and getting larger and larger, and what it will do is that little hole will open, and you may have liquid that comes out. It's just letting the pressure off. There's nothing wrong. The good news is the bacteria can't get back inside. So I always recommend that you put this in some kind of a jar. I might put it in something pretty like a little chicken bowl, and it will sit on my counter, and I hopefully won't have a mess when I wake up in the morning. A couple things I want to mention about this. There's a lot of different ways of fermenting. I love using just the salt method. It's really called the wild method. But I also use culture products. So there are many on the market. This happens to be one. It's a starter culture from Cutting Edge Cultures. I get it at Cultures for Life, Cultures for Health, excuse me. Dr. Mercola has a culture powder, and we found in our center what we like to use actually is a probiotic pill that we'll open up and go ahead and add that in. And for those people that are using cultures for more medicinal purposes, you can find that culture, that probiotic that you really need, add it to your culture. Now you've got food that is really your medicine too. So food can double, and food is our medicine, so let's use it to the best of our ability. The salt does make bacteria, there's no question about it, but we don't know what kinds of bacteria. Not that that's not good either. So I like to have in our house, we have, right now I've got cabbage in the refrigerator, I've got pickles in the refrigerator, I have cabbage with oranges in there, cabbages with apples in there. I have some pickled okra, fermented okra from last year. And every day we have a little bit of everything. I do have some tomatoes left from last week, and they're almost gone. They'll be gone probably tonight after dinner. So now we're ready for our next batch. I want to thank you for joining me here today. And if you have any questions, you can contact me at gina@ghhcenter.com. And I'll be glad to take any of your questions that you have. Have a great day.